There is one thing that has always bothered me since the Bleach manga has ended. We know that Ichigo became this reality-breaking hybrid being with hollow Shinigami and Quincy powers, and this is credited to the unique bloodline of his parents. But despite how gifted Ichigo is, his sisters Karin and Yuzu, who share the exact same parents, remain largely powerless throughout the entire series. And this isn't just a minor plot oversight, it's one of the most glaring inconsistencies within the power system of Bleach. Both girls were born to Ichigo Kurosaki, a former captain of the Gotei 13, and Masaki Kurosaki, a pure-blooded Quincy who was tainted by the Hollow White. These same genetics, which had made Ichigo such a powerful being, should also have created two more powerhouses within the Kurosaki family, but instead we got glimpses of potential that were never really capitalized upon. There were wasted opportunities that still frustrate fans to this day, so for this reason I want to break down and explain why Ichigo's sisters don't have powers within this video. So let's talk about the origin of Ichigo's powers first. So Ichigo inherited his Quincy abilities from Masaki's bloodline, and this is established within the series. His Shinigami powers came from his father Isshin, and the hollow powers that he acquires were inherited from his mother Masaki, who was attacked by the Hollow White. The inherited hollow had fused with his inherited Shinigami powers in order to form his Zanpakuto Zangetsu. Karin and Yuzu have the identical genetic background, but yet somehow Bleach treats them like any ordinary powerless citizen of Karakura Town. The explanation that we're given is that White had apparently entirely passed down to Ichigo because he was the firstborn. If this was true, then Masaki surely would have had her powers returned to her and she would have been able to defend herself against the Hollow Grand Fisher. But of course she wasn't able to because Ashwaulan had been casted, thus making her powerless. But Ashwaulan was only going to be effective against mixed-blooded Quincy. So if White had in fact entirely passed down to Ichigo, then Masaki would have returned to being a pure-blooded Quincy, but this wasn't the case. So if we argue that Masaki still had fragments of White within her when she had given birth to Yuzu and Karin, then it would make sense that they too would inherit some hollow powers. Quincy powers are not unique to just firstborns, as they are typically passed down the bloodline, and the same is true for Shinigami powers. Both sisters have shown glimpses of their inherited abilities. Karin demonstrates spiritual awareness, which is comparable to Ichigo's pre-awakened state, and she can see hollows clearly, perceive Shinigami, and even sense spiritual pressure fluctuations that escape detection by ordinary humans. On the other hand, you have Yuzu, who shows even more subtle but still present spiritual sensitivity, as she is able to sense disturbances even if she can't see their source directly. Yuzu and Karin are in fact not ordinary humans in Karakura Town, who happen to develop minor psychic abilities. These are the daughters of two spiritually powerful parents who are showing textbook symptoms of dormant hybrid abilities. Bleach acknowledges their potential repeatedly, but it does absolutely nothing with it, and I'm assuming this is because Kubo wants to focus the story on the protagonist Ichigo Kurosaki. While I understand Kubo not wanting to go off on tangents with his own story, this approach does leave readers feeling strung along, especially when there are no narrative payoffs with Yuzu and Karin, when Kubo clearly put in a bit of effort to do some setup for those characters. Karin does represent quite a lot of wasted potential within Bleach. From her very first appearance, she's established as having spiritual awareness, which is similar to Ichigo's, as she sees the Grand Fisher's true form during the Grey Visit incident, and she guides Chad during his fight with the Hollow at her soccer game because she can see the enemy clearly while he's still operating on instinct. During the Don Kanonji story, she's watching Ichigo fight in his Shinigami form with perfect clarity. She's not squinting at blurry shapes like Chad and Tatsuki. She's able to see everything with clarity. This isn't normal human spiritual sensitivity. This is as a result of her inherited power manifesting exactly as it should be for someone with her bloodline. The series even hints at Karin training with Urahara during the Fullbring arc, and we see her visiting his shop, clearly being prepared for something. Fans were buzzing with speculation, thinking that she's finally going to awaken her Shinigami powers. Was Urahara going to give her the same training that he had given to Ichigo? But unfortunately, nothing had come of this. This entire subplot got dropped without explanation. What makes this even more frustrating is Karin's personality. She is tough, pragmatic, and protective of her family. Unlike the typical damsel in distress character type, she actively wants to help. When she tells Urahara from now on it's my turn to protect my brother, she's not making empty declarations. She genuinely wants the power to make a difference. Her obsession with soccer alone offers endless possibilities. Imagine Karin developing Quincy abilities that manifest through her athletic skills. She could create a ball of energy Reiatsu and kick that towards opponents, similar to Ichigo's Getsuga Tensho, and with her being very athletic, her acquiring Shinigami powers would enhance her already impressive physical capabilities. Despite all of these incredible possibilities, all that we really got to see her do in combat situations is literally kick a soccer ball at weak hollows. By the end of Bleach, she's still operating at the same basic level of spiritual awareness that Ichigo had at the start of the series, showing that Karin has not really progressed at all since she was 11 years old, despite her being 21 during the epilogue of Bleach. There was no growth, no awakening, no payoffs for years of setup, and then we have Yuzu, who is pretty much forgotten for most of the series. She gets overlooked even more than Karin, which is saying something. Bleach consistently portrays her as the normal sister who can't see spirits. Yuzu isn't spiritually blind, she's just spiritually suppressed for some reason. Yuzu has been shown to sense spiritual disturbances, as during hollow attacks she can feel the changes in the atmosphere before a hollow manifests. She is able to pick up on her family's emotional states with uncanny accuracy, often knowing when something supernatural is happening even when she's not directly involved. This pattern matches perfectly with what we know about impure Quincy powers. According to Bleach, Quincy abilities in mixed bloodlines often remain dormant until triggered by exposure to active Quincy spiritual pressure. Ichigo's Quincy powers didn't manifest until his fight with Yhwach, despite having the bloodline from his mother. And the same could be true for the dormant Shinigami powers which Ichigo had awakened when Rukia had shared her powers with him. Maybe both Yuzu and Karin need some sort of a catalyst in order to awaken those dormant powers. It does seem as though Yuzu has taken after Masaki, while Karin has taken after Isshin. There are theories that if the sisters were to have awakened powers, then Yuzu would specialize in Quincy powers, while Karin would specialize with Shinigami powers. Kubo may well have planned for this, but for one reason or another he never executed upon these ideas. Now let's come back to the topic of whether if Ichigo completely inherited White from his mother Masaki, as some theorize that it wasn't possible for White to be inherited by Yuzu and Karin. Now this doesn't actually match what we are told within Bleach. First, let's address the timeline issue. Urahara explicitly states that the hollow infection would affect Masaki's descendants. This is plural, so it's not exclusive to her firstborn. He never suggests that White's influence will be limited to a single child. The infection was described as something that would continue through her bloodline, not something that would be completely extracted by one birth. So I'm guessing that even Kazui may be inheriting White from Ichigo too. Secondly, we have the evidence of lingering hollow influence. Masaki was still considered impure by Quincy standards even after Ichigo's birth, and if White had truly passed entirely to her son, wouldn't her spiritual signature return to its original pure state? The fact that she remained tainted suggests that some hollow influence persisted in her system, which is why Ashvalin was able to affect her. The third reason, there's a question of how spiritual influence actually works in Bleach. We've never seen a case where a parent completely loses an aspect of their spiritual nature because they passed it on to a child. Shinigami don't become powerless after having children. Quincy don't lose their abilities when the next generation awakens their powers. The idea that Masaki would be completely cleansed of hollow influence by giving birth contradicts every other example of spiritual inheritance in the series. That we have Karin's spiritual awareness, which doesn't just match pre-awakened Ichigo, in some ways it exceeds it. She can perceive memories and emotional imprints associated with spirits, something that requires a deeper connection to the spiritual realm than basic sight. This level of sensitivity suggests that she may have hollow influence in her blood, not just standard Shinigami Quincy heritage. It seems like Karin's abilities noticeably strengthened after Ichigo had had lost his Shinigami powers following his fight with Aizen. There is a theory that rather than White passing entirely to Ichigo, the Hollow may have fragmented across the three siblings, with the core consciousness and power going to the firstborn Ichigo, and the residual influence being passed down to Karin and Yuzu. Another frustrating point is how Bleach handles power awakening situations. Both sisters were present during major conflicts, like the events that are unfolded during the Substitute Shinigami arc, the Arrancar arc, and the 1000-Year Blood War arc. These are exactly the kind of scenarios which would typically trigger dormant abilities to be awakened within Bleach. Within the series, we see characters discover their powers when they are pushed to their limits by life-threatening situations. Take for example Orihime and even Chad. And their powers were awakened thanks to them being in close proximity to Rukia, and this is because Urahara had placed the Hokyoku within her Gigai. Considering that Rukia was staying in Kurosaki Clinic, I'm really shocked that both Yuzu and Karin were not affected by the influence of the Hokyoku. Would they have not had a desire to protect their loved ones after seeing the hollow attacks? Was it not possible for the Hokyoku to awaken their dormant powers? The series does establish all of the prerequisites for their awakening, but it refuses to pull the trigger on it. If you want a serious answer as to why Karin and Yuzu never got their powers, it's because giving them abilities would have complicated Kubo's narrative in ways that I don't think he was ready to handle. Having powerful sisters would have fundamentally changed Ichigo's character arc. His entire motivation revolves around protecting his loved ones from supernatural threats, so if Karin and Yuzu were able to defend themselves, then it removes one of his primary emotional drivers, and it would force Kubo to completely rewrite the character arc of Ichigo. But now that Bleach is over and we've had a satisfactory conclusion to Ichigo's story, I think that there is an opportunity for Yuzu and Karin to awaken their powers, especially considering the fact that they are in their 20s now when the Hell arc is taking place. So it would be cool to see them being active participants in a future Bleach story arc fighting alongside Kazui. The success of the narrative of Bleach relies heavily upon the chosen one narrative trope which had supported Ichigo's character. Making his sisters equally as special as him reduces that uniqueness, so I'm sure it was easier for Kubo to maintain Ichigo as the singular special protagonist rather than to develop his siblings as also being chosen one special hybrid transcendent beings. Fans have spent years theorizing about what Yuzu and Karin's powers could look like, and some of these concepts are very compelling. Like I mentioned earlier, it would make sense for Karin to inherit more Shinigami-based abilities due to her aggressive, protective nature, while Yuzu could realistically develop Quincy powers that complement her gentle, nurturing personality. Or she may develop Fullbring abilities similar to Orihime. These options would allow Ichigo's sisters to contribute towards battles without overlapping with Ichigo's moveset. Some fans theorize that Yuzu and Karin's powers are still dormant, waiting for the Hell arc to finally awaken them, and I do think that this is the most plausible theory of them all. We have now reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What are your thoughts about the dormant powers of Karin and Yuzu? If there's anything that I've forgotten to mention within this video, then let me know by continuing the discussion in the comments, and lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this one, and I cannot wait to see you in my next Bleach video.
A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.